Do not be deceived by the outer world, for what you see with your eyes is but a shadow of what you have assumed within. The great secret, hidden in plain sight, is that your assumption, when persisted in, will harden into fact. This is the eternal law of life. The world you now occupy is the out-pictured state of consciousness you have dared or failed to assume. Every event, every relationship, every condition is nothing more than the crystallization of some inner conviction. If you desire to change the world around you, you must first change the world within you. How is it done? Through imagination. Enter the scene of your fulfilled desire, not as a spectator, but as the one already possessing it. Walk in it, touch it, hear the sounds of triumph, feel the joy of accomplishment. This inner drama, played faithfully, is the seed planted in the fertile soil of consciousness. Persist, and the invisible root will burst forth into visible fruit. Do not waver when appearances deny your assumption. Appearances are but yesterday's thoughts objectified. Continue in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Let that feeling become your dwelling place, and it will summon circumstances, events, and people to bear witness to your faith. My friends, decide today to live as though your prayer were already answered. Dare to assume it, persist in it, and watch how quickly the unseen becomes seen. This is the way it will harden into fact. Outer reality reflects inner assumptions, because the world is nothing more than the mirror of your inner state of consciousness. Whatever you accept as true within yourself, whether consciously or unconsciously, shapes the circumstances, events, and relationships of your daily life. If you dwell in lack, life will faithfully echo that lack. But if you dare to assume abundance, life will rearrange itself to express that assumption. The outer world is not separate from you, it is your own imagination pushed out. By changing the assumptions you hold inwardly, you alter the very fabric of what unfolds outwardly. Assumption, when persisted in, becomes fact because consciousness is the only reality, and what you assume with feeling and faith must eventually externalize itself. An assumption is not a fleeting thought or wishful daydream. It is the inner acceptance of something as already true, even when the outer world shows no sign of it. The power lies in persistence. To assume a state once and then abandon it when appearances contradict is to uproot the seed before it can grow. But when you hold fast to the assumption, revisiting it again and again in imagination, feeling its reality, and dwelling in it as though it were already accomplished, you impress it deeper upon the subconscious mind. The subconscious, being impersonal and creative, takes that assumption as fact and moves through unseen channels to bring it forth into objective reality. Time is only the interval between the seed planted and the harvest, and persistence bridges that gap. The outer world must eventually bend to the inner conviction, for no assumption long persisted in can remain without expression. It is not the force of effort, but the quiet consistency of belief that transforms the invisible into the visible. Imagination is the creative power because it is the foundation of every experience, invention, and manifestation that has ever come into being. Nothing exists in the world that was not first imagined. Every building, every piece of art, every discovery, and every personal transformation began as an idea held in the unseen realm of the mind. Imagination is not idle fantasy. It is the very substance of creation itself. It shapes the invisible into form, giving life to what the senses have not yet touched. When you dare to use your imagination deliberately, you step into the role of creator, designing the reality you wish to inhabit rather than passively accepting what appears before you. To imagine is to select a state of consciousness and clothe yourself in it. You can construct scenes of the wish fulfilled, enter them in thought, and feel their reality as though it were already yours. These imaginal acts, sustained with conviction, are seeds planted in the subconscious mind. Just as a seed, once buried, draws to itself all that is needed for its growth, your assumption, when felt as real, calls forth circumstances, opportunities, and events that align with it. The outer world bends and reshapes itself to reflect the inner imaginal act. Imagination is limitless and unconstrained by logic, circumstance, or current appearances. It moves beyond the facts of the present moment and claims the truth of what is desired as already existing. This inner creative act precedes all outward change. By training yourself to live more in imagination than in reaction to the world of senses, you awaken to your true power and discover that life is not happening to you, but flowing from you. Imagination is the origin, the force, and the blueprint of reality. Enter the state of the wish fulfilled by moving beyond the senses and stepping boldly into the unseen reality of your desire already accomplished. The state of the wish fulfilled is not about hoping or waiting for something to come. It is about living inwardly as though it were already present, already real, already yours. When you enter that state, you shift your consciousness from longing to having, from seeking to possessing, from separation to union with the very thing you desire. Consciousness is the only creative power, and the state you occupy within determines what must eventually appear without. To enter the state of the wish fulfilled, you must first quiet the chatter of doubt and turn inward to imagination. Construct a simple scene that implies the fulfillment of your desire. If wealth is your aim, see yourself handling money, paying bills with ease, or enjoying the freedom of abundance. If love is your goal, imagine the warmth of a hand in yours, the sound of loving words spoken to you, or the joy of companionship already secured. These imaginal scenes need not be elaborate, but they must carry the naturalness of reality. Feel the emotions as though the event were happening now, and let that feeling saturate your being. The key lies in persistence. To briefly enter the state and then abandon it when outer appearances deny it is to fall back into the old state of lack. You must remain faithful to the new state, returning to it again and again until it feels more real than what the senses report. When doubts arise, do not fight them. Simply turn once more to your imaginal scene and dwell in it until its reality outweighs the illusion of absence. The outer world is a delayed reflection of inner states, so patience is required. But persistence in the state of the wish fulfilled guarantees its eventual externalization. By continually occupying the inner state of having, you train your subconscious mind to accept it as fact. The subconscious, in turn, sets into motion all necessary means to bring your inner conviction to life. The state you dare to assume inwardly is the seed from which the world of form is born. And once you live in the end must manifest. Feel the reality of your desire now by recognizing that the true act of creation begins within you, not outside of you. The world you see is nothing more than a reflection of the assumptions you hold to be true, and those assumptions are clothed in the feelings you entertain. To feel the reality of your desire is to accept it inwardly as though it were already here, already present, already accomplished. This feeling is not wishful thinking, nor is it a vague hope for some future outcome. It is the deliberate choice to dwell in the emotional state of fulfillment, to carry within yourself the certainty that what you seek is already yours. When you close your eyes and turn away from the distractions of the outer world, you can begin to construct a simple imaginal act that implies the fulfillment of your desire. It could be as subtle as hearing someone congratulate you, as intimate as receiving a loving embrace, or as vivid as walking into your new home. The scene itself matters less than the feeling it generates. The key is to immerse yourself so deeply in the imaginal experience that it feels natural, as though it were not something hoped for, but something already attained. By feeling it real now, you are impressing this assumption upon the subconscious mind, and once impressed, the subconscious will faithfully outpicture it in your life. The senses may scream the opposite, the world may appear unchanged, yet this does not matter. What you feel inwardly is the seed of tomorrow's reality. If you persist in the feeling of having, the outer world must eventually reflect that inner conviction. This is the law of consciousness. What is assumed and felt to be true will harden into fact. To waver, to slip back into the feeling of lack, is to delay the manifestation, but to persist, even in the face of contradiction, is to ensure its fulfillment. It is not effort that brings your desire to life, but the naturalness of feeling. The more you return to the state of the wish fulfilled, the more natural it becomes to you, until one day you no longer feel the separation between desire and reality. You simply know it is yours, and in that knowing, the world rearranges itself to match. This is why feeling is the secret. Thought alone is not enough. It is the emotional acceptance, the inner conviction, the living in the end that gives power to the imaginal act. So, practice daily. Withdraw into imagination. Create the scene, feel it as real, and carry that feeling with you into the waking world. As you move about your day, let the inner reality dominate your awareness more than the outer appearances. By doing so, you lift yourself into the state where your desire is not a distant hope, but a present fact, and in time, life will bear witness to the reality you first dared to feel within. Appearances are past beliefs, not final truth, because the world you see today is nothing more than the outpicturing of assumptions once entertained and feelings once accepted as real. Every condition, every circumstance, every relationship is the shadow of a state of consciousness that has already been impressed upon the mind. What confronts you outwardly is not permanent, nor is it the ultimate reality. It is the residue of old thoughts, the harvest of seeds sown in imagination long before you recognized your power. To take appearances as the final truth is to bind yourself to yesterday's creations, but to see them as passing reflections is to claim the freedom to create anew. When you observe a condition in the outer world, whether it be lack, illness, conflict, or limitation, you must remember that it is only the visible echo of an inner belief. That echo is powerless in itself. It holds no authority except the one you continue to grant it. The moment you withdraw your faith from appearances and invest your belief in a new assumption, you plant the seed of transformation. Life is ever responding to the state you occupy, and states are maintained by feeling. If you continue to accept the outer evidence as true, you reinforce the old state and thus perpetuate its expression. But if you dare to assume a new reality, if you dare to feel it real now, appearances will eventually dissolve and give way to the new conviction impressed upon the subconscious. Consider the simple truth that time creates the illusion of permanence. A tree does not spring forth the moment the seed is planted, yet no one doubts that the seed, once placed in fertile soil, will in due season bring forth its fruit. In the same way, your assumptions once held and felt as true will in their appointed time manifest as facts in your world. To become impatient, to look at appearances and declare them unchangeable, is to forget that what you see is only the harvest of yesterday. The creative act is always now, and the future is only the delayed reflection of what you are assuming and feeling in this present moment. Appearances often seem stubborn, but their persistence is only proof of the strength of the old belief that gave them birth. They are not eternal, they are not ultimate reality. They are fading forms, destined to pass as soon as your inner conviction changes. Just as a shadow disappears when the light source shifts, so too will the outward picture change when the inner state is altered. The task, then, is not to wrestle with appearances, but to change your awareness, to step into the feeling of the wish fulfilled, to see and experience within yourself that which you desire to be. When you understand that appearances are past beliefs, you cease to fear them or feel bound by them. You know that no matter how fixed or immovable a condition may appear, it is only the reflection of what once was believed and can be replaced by what is now assumed. The power does not lie in appearances. The power lies in your imagination, in your willingness to claim a new state and persist in it until it expresses itself in the world. By refusing to be deceived by the evidence of the senses and choosing instead to hold fast to the unseen reality within, you align yourself with the true creative law of life. This is the secret of freedom, for when you no longer give authority to appearances, you discover that the truth is always what you dare to assume and feel as real now. Persistence is the secret to manifestation, because the outer world does not change instantly at the first touch of imagination, but bends slowly and steadily to the inner conviction that is maintained over time. Every desire you hold is possible. Every dream you envision is within reach, but the bridge between desire and fulfillment is persistence. To persist is to remain faithful to the unseen reality of your wish fulfilled, regardless of how stubborn appearances may seem. Without persistence, you are like a farmer who plants a seed today and digs it up tomorrow in search of evidence that it is growing. With persistence, you trust the process, knowing that once the seed is sown in imagination and watered with feeling, the harvest must appear in its season. Manifestation is not accomplished through force, struggle, or constant effort in the outer world. It is the quiet but unwavering inner commitment to live from the end, to return again and again in imagination to the scene that implies fulfillment. The first time you enter into the state of your wish fulfilled, you impress a seed upon the subconscious mind, but impressions grow deeper with repetition. The subconscious accepts as true that which is felt consistently, not that which is touched once and then abandoned. Persistence is the means by which the new belief replaces the old and becomes the dominant state of consciousness. The world of senses may continue to present evidence of lack, failure, or limitation, for appearances are nothing more than the lingering shadows of past beliefs. If you react to those appearances, if you give them power by accepting them as final truth, you strengthen the old state and delay the birth of the new. But if you remain steadfast, refusing to waver, returning in imagination to the reality you choose, you weaken the hold of the old state until it dissolves completely. Persistence is not about forcing the outer world, but about remaining faithful inwardly, and in time, the outer must mirror the inner conviction. The difference between those who succeed in manifestation and those who fail is not that one is more gifted or favored than the other, but that one persists where the other gives up. Many people imagine their desire once, feel uplifted for a moment, and then fall back into doubt and discouragement when nothing changes immediately. They forget that manifestation is a process of gestation, that the invisible roots must grow before the visible fruit appears. Persistence bridges this interval of time. It is the discipline of faith, the refusal to be swayed by appearances, the inner certainty that what is assumed and felt as true will harden into fact. Persistence is also what transforms imagination into habit. At first, it may seem unnatural to dwell in the state of the wish fulfilled. Doubts may arise, and the old self may resist the new assumption. Yet with practice, with daily return to the imaginal act, the new state becomes natural, automatic, and effortless. Just as a path becomes clear by continual walking, the mind accepts and normalizes the new reality through persistence. When the new state feels natural, it is only a matter of time before it expresses outwardly. It is important to understand that persistence is not straining or forcing yourself to believe against reason. True persistence is quiet confidence, a gentle but firm returning to the end you have chosen. Even if you falter or doubt momentarily, persistence calls you back to the imaginal scene, back to the feeling of accomplishment, back to the certainty that what you desire is already yours within. Each return strengthens the impression upon the subconscious, and each impression draws you closer to its manifestation. When you persist, you align yourself with the law of consciousness, which knows no failure. The outer world has no choice but to reflect the inner state when it is maintained faithfully. No condition, no circumstance, no person can resist the creative power of a persistent assumption. The truth is simple yet profound. Persistence is the bridge between imagination and reality, between desire and fulfillment, between the invisible and the visible. It is the hidden key that ensures that what you dare to assume and feel as real will, in due time, harden into fact live inwardly as though it is already done, by recognizing that the only true creative act takes place within the imagination. The outer world is nothing more than a reflection, a delayed shadow of the state of consciousness you have most faithfully occupied. When you accept this, you see that living from the end is not simply an exercise or a technique, but the very foundation of transformation. To live inwardly as though it is already done means that you no longer identify with longing, waiting, or hoping, but instead you embody the feeling of accomplishment, possession, and fulfillment. You cease to beg life for what you want, and instead carry yourself as one who already has it, knowing that what is true inwardly must eventually express itself outwardly. The mind has two movements: living from desire or living from fulfillment. Most people live in the former, constantly affirming their lack by desiring what they feel is missing. But desire, when not clothed in fulfillment, only reinforces the state of not having. To live inwardly as though it is already done is to reverse this pattern and assume the end as present fact. It is to close the gap between what you want and who you are by taking the wish fulfilled as your current reality. This does not mean ignoring the evidence of the senses but refusing to give it authority. The senses may declare that nothing has changed, but inwardly you are anchored in the knowing that everything has already shifted. When you live in the end, you inhabit a new state of consciousness, and consciousness is the only creative power. States are like rooms in an infinite house, each containing its own experiences, relationships, and conditions. By entering the state of the wish fulfilled, you step into the room that already holds everything you desire. From that point onward, your inner conversations, your reactions, and even your mood align with the reality of having rather than wanting. Life, being a mirror, reflects this state back to you in form, people, and events. To live inwardly as though it is already done requires imagination and feeling. It is not enough to think abstractly about your desire. You must feel its reality. Imagine the scene that implies the fulfillment of your wish and dwell in it until it feels natural. If health is your goal, imagine the ease and vitality of a healthy body. If wealth is your aim, feel the security, freedom, and joy of financial abundance. If love is your desire, live as though you are already cherished, already embraced, already chosen. By continually returning to this inner state, you impress the subconscious mind, and the subconscious, being the womb of creation, accepts it as fact and brings it to life. The challenge for many is the apparent contradiction between inner fulfillment and outer lack. The world of appearances may deny your assumption, and doubt may whisper that nothing is happening. Yet this is where persistence proves its worth. Living inwardly as though it is already done is not a one-time act, but a way of being. Each time you choose to return to the feeling of fulfillment, you strengthen the new state. Each time you refuse to be swayed by appearances, you weaken the hold of the old state. Over time, the new state becomes dominant, and when it does, the outer world must conform. Living from the end also changes how you carry yourself in daily life. You begin to think, act, and feel as the version of yourself who already has the desire realized. Its decisions are made from the perspective of accomplishment, not lack. Opportunities appear where once there were none because your inner conviction magnetizes the outer world. Even conversations shift, for your words now spring from the identity of one who already possesses. This shift is subtle yet powerful, for it aligns every level of your being with the truth of fulfillment. Consider the difference between wanting and having. Wanting implies distance, separation, and incompletion. Having implies arrival, unity, and satisfaction. The state you occupy inwardly determines which of these realities becomes your experience. To continually affirm wanting is to perpetuate the absence of the thing desired, but to live in the feeling of having is to call forth the evidence of possession. The subconscious does not distinguish between what is real and what is imagined. It only responds to the feeling impressed upon it. Thus, the more vividly and consistently you feel yourself to be already fulfilled, the more quickly your outer life must align with that inner conviction. Living inwardly as though it is already done is an act of faith. It requires trust in the unseen, confidence in the law of assumption, and willingness to let go of the old identity that clings to lack and limitation. Yet faith is not blind. It is the recognition that the inner world is the cause and the outer is the effect. When you anchor yourself in the feeling of fulfillment, you are aligning with the only true cause of reality. In time, the effect must follow. This way of living frees you from the endless cycle of waiting for external validation. No longer do you postpone joy, peace, or confidence until circumstances change. You generate them now inwardly by assuming that all you desire is already yours. This shift not only accelerates manifestation, but transforms your present experience, for you no longer live in longing, but in the richness of fulfillment. You no longer chase after life, you allow life to reflect the reality you have already chosen to embody. To live inwardly as though it is already done is to stand at the end of the journey while still at its beginning, to claim the victory before the evidence appears, to wear the crown before it is visible to others. It is the secret by which imagination shapes reality, the law by which assumption hardens into fact, the way by which every dream is brought to life. Consciousness creates reality, because everything you experience outwardly originates first in the inner world of awareness. The thoughts you dwell upon, the assumptions you hold, and the feelings you entertain are not passive movements of mind, but the very substance from which life takes form. What you call the outer world is nothing more than the projection of states of consciousness. Every person you meet, every condition you encounter, and every circumstance that unfolds is shaped and determined by what you have accepted within yourself. Consciousness is cause, and the world of form is effect. To understand this is to discover the key to transformation, for by changing your inner state, you inevitably change the outer reflection. The average person believes that life happens to them, that circumstances are dictated by chance, fate, or external powers beyond their control. Yet the truth is that nothing comes into your world except that which has first been accepted within. If you believe in limitation, you will encounter limitation in countless forms. If you assume abundance, abundance will flow to you in ways you could not have predicted. Consciousness is not limited by logic, time, or the present facts of the senses. It is creative and self-sustaining, forever bringing into expression that which is most vividly impressed upon it. Every condition in your life today is the shadow of a state of consciousness once entertained. These states are not idle, they are living realities in the invisible realm of imagination. When you dwell in a state long enough, feeling it real, you impress it upon the subconscious mind, and the subconscious, being without reasoning faculty of its own, accepts it as truth and brings it forth into experience. This is the secret behind all manifestation. The outer world is consciousness pushed out. If you dislike what you see, the solution is not to fight the shadows, but to alter the inner state from which they proceed. To grasp this truth is to realize the futility of struggling with outer conditions. You cannot permanently change your circumstances without first changing the state of consciousness that gave them birth. The law is exact. You can rise no higher than the concept of yourself that you entertain. If you continue to see yourself as small, unworthy, or lacking, no amount of effort in the external world will produce lasting change. But if you dare to assume yourself great, worthy, and complete, then life will conform itself to that assumption. The world is plastic to your inner state, yielding itself obediently to the beliefs you persist in holding. Consciousness operates through imagination and feeling. To create deliberately, you must learn to imagine vividly and feel deeply. It is not enough to think of what you want. You must think from it. You must enter into the scene of fulfillment and live there inwardly until it becomes natural. This act of inner dwelling is the planting of a seed in the subconscious, and once planted, it will grow of its own accord. You are never required to know how your desire will unfold, for the subconscious has ways beyond your understanding to arrange the circumstances of its expression. Your only task is to assume the state and persist in it until it feels real. When you say that consciousness creates reality, you acknowledge that you are the master of your fate, not the victim of circumstance. You are never at the mercy of the outer world, for the outer world is only the reflection of your own inner activity. The conditions you now see are but the result of yesterday's assumptions, and tomorrow will be the result of today's. This places the responsibility of creation squarely upon your shoulders, but it also offers the profound freedom of knowing that you can begin anew at any moment, by assuming a higher state, by living inwardly in harmony with your desire. You call forth a new world from within yourself. Consciousness is infinite in potential, and there is no limit to what it can express. Whatever you can imagine and feel as real, you can manifest. This is not philosophy but law, and the law operates with exact precision. You are free to choose your states, but once chosen, they must express themselves. This is why persistence is so essential. A single moment of assuming is a seed planted, but only through persistence is that seed nourished until it grows into fact. If you allow doubt and contradiction to pull you back into old states, you delay the harvest. But if you remain steadfast in the new assumption, the harvest is inevitable. The world is filled with examples of this law at work. Every invention, every discovery, every work of art, every achievement began first as an idea held in consciousness. Before it was seen by others, it was lived inwardly by the one who dared to assume it possible. The same principle applies to personal transformation. If you live inwardly as though you are healthy, loved, successful, or free, and persist in that assumption, the outer world must eventually conform to your inner conviction. The great mistake is to let appearances dictate consciousness. Appearances are nothing more than the echoes of past states, and to accept them as final is to remain bound by them. The wise man looks not at what is but at what he desires to be, and by dwelling in that state inwardly, he compels the outer world to follow. Life does not create consciousness, consciousness creates life. When you awaken to this truth, you realize that imagination is not idle fancy, but the creative power of the universe operating through you. You understand that feeling is not a fleeting emotion, but the energy that impresses the subconscious with reality. You see that faith is not blind hope, but the refusal to accept appearances as ultimate truth. Consciousness, when directed deliberately, is the author of destiny, the shaper of circumstance, the unseen hand that molds the clay of life into form. The secret, then, is to live daily from the awareness that your inner state is the cause and your outer experience the effect. Choose your states wisely, dwell in them faithfully, feel them deeply, and allow life to reflect them in its perfect time. Consciousness creates reality, and by mastering your inner world, you hold the key to mastering your outer world. What you dare to assume will manifest, because assumption is the creative act by which consciousness impresses itself upon reality and calls forth from the unseen the forms, circumstances, and experiences that align with it. Assumption is not idle daydreaming, nor is it casual wishing. It is the deliberate acceptance of a state as true, even when the senses deny it. To assume is to occupy a position inwardly, to live in imagination as though the desire were already fulfilled, to clothe yourself in the feeling of accomplishment. What you dare to assume will manifest, because consciousness is the only cause, and once a state is accepted inwardly with persistence, it must externalize itself in the world of form. The word dare is vital, for assumption often requires boldness. To assume health when the body appears weak, to assume abundance when the pocket is empty, to assume love when loneliness surrounds you. This is daring. It is to defy appearances and refuse to bow to the evidence of the senses. The senses present only what has already been accepted and impressed upon the subconscious. They show you the past, not the truth of what can be. Daring to assume is the act of faith that disregards what is seen in favor of what is felt within. It is the courage to plant a new seed in imagination, knowing that the outer world must yield to it in due time. What you assume determines the state of consciousness you occupy, and states of consciousness are creative. Each state carries within it the conditions, relationships, and events that correspond to it. To assume wealth is to enter into the state where wealth already exists, and from that state, life arranges itself to bring forth the experiences of wealth. To assume love is to inhabit the state where you are already cherished, and from that state, life orchestrates encounters, conversations, and circumstances that mirror the inner conviction. The world is not separate from you, it is consciousness objectified. Your assumptions are the invisible blueprint from which the visible structure of your life is built. Daring to assume means to persist in the face of contradiction. A single assumption entertained briefly may plant a seed, but unless it is nourished through repetition and persistence, it may wither before it bears fruit. The subconscious accepts not passing thoughts, but deeply felt convictions. To dare to assume is to hold fast to the inner reality until it becomes more natural to you than the outer appearance. This persistence transforms the assumption into belief, and belief, once impressed upon the subconscious, is compelled to externalize. Life cannot do otherwise, for the outer is nothing more than the unfolding of the inner state. Every invention, every discovery, every achievement is proof of this law. The airplane, the telephone, the light bulb, all were once assumptions dared by those who refused to accept the limitations of their present world. Before a single piece of metal was forged or a wire was connected, these creations lived in imagination as assumptions accepted as true. The world ridiculed them. Appearances denied them, but persistence in the assumption brought them forth into fact. What is true of inventions is equally true of personal transformation. To assume yourself healthy, prosperous, loved, or free, and to persist in that assumption until it feels natural is to guarantee its manifestation. The difficulty for most lies in the pull of the old state. The mind tends to return to what feels familiar, even if that state is one of lack or limitation. This is why daring is required. To dare to assume is to resist the gravitational pull of the old self and to step boldly into the identity of the new. It is to walk by faith and not by sight, to trust the unseen over the seen, to live from the conviction that what you assume is already real within consciousness and therefore must become real without. Imagination is the tool by which assumption is enacted. To assume is to imagine vividly, to create inner scenes that imply fulfillment, to hear the words that would be spoken, to feel the sensations that would accompany the accomplished desire. It is not the length or complexity of the scene that matters, but the intensity of the feeling it generates. When you feel it real, when you lose yourself in the imaginal act as though it were happening now, you are assuming. That assumption, when persisted in, impresses itself upon the subconscious, and once impressed, the subconscious produces it in the outer world. What you dare to assume will manifest because the subconscious is creative and impersonal. It accepts as true whatever is impressed upon it with feeling and persists in reproducing it in your experience. It does not question whether the assumption is good or bad, logical or illogical. It simply accepts and expresses. If you assume failure, failure will manifest. If you assume success, success will manifest. The choice is always yours, and the law never fails. This is why it is said that life does not care whether you assume riches or poverty, joy or sorrow. It simply reflects back to you the state you most consistently occupy. To live by this principle requires discipline, for the senses continually tempt you to accept appearances as final. But appearances are not truth, they are the past crystallized into form. They are yesterday's assumptions hardened into fact. To dare to assume is to remember that creation is always now, that the present moment is the place of power, and that by assuming differently now, you set in motion a new chain of events. The outer may take time to catch up, just as a seed takes time to sprout, but persistence ensures that it will. What you dare to assume will manifest because assumption is the act of creation itself. The world you inhabit today is the sum total of past assumptions, and the world you will inhabit tomorrow will be the sum total of what you dare to assume today. Nothing is withheld from you except that which you withhold from yourself by refusing to assume it. No power in heaven or earth can prevent the manifestation of an assumption once it has been fully accepted and persisted in, for the law of consciousness is absolute. To dare to assume is to take hold of this law and direct it consciously, rather than letting old states unconsciously govern your life. The invitation is simple yet profound. Dare to assume the best of yourself. Dare to assume your desires already fulfilled. Dare to step into the identity of the one you wish to be. The moment you do, you have already set in motion the forces that will bring it to pass. What you dare to assume will manifest because assumption, persisted in, becomes fact, and consciousness, being the only reality, always outpictures itself in the world of form.